I watched that doc recently,
Yeah.
and a lot of the way that he speaks there is very similar to real life. Like like it's not the best scenario, but for Enzo, it's great. You know, I love Enzo too. I enjoy running into him at shows and stuff to this day. I think he's so talented. Like, if there's anybody that could they are who they are. They do not have to be nice to you. He's one of those guys, but he is the complete opposite. Like, he is so normal and down to earth. It's crazy. Like, in the locker room, he's just like any other guy. He goes, yeah, I bet you don't play as much. I said, brother, I don't sit down in a chair until like 9 p.m. Like,
Yes.
my back hurts more from parenting than it does from wrestling, you know. But I get it in every now and then. So
Yeah, like lately, I've been like to be honest, my kids has took over like all the consoles now, so I kind of just like I guess I'm being cheeky. I kind of emulate stuff on my laptop, and
yeah.
I've got like a PS2 on it at the minute. It runs perfect, by the way, runs like a dream. But like lately, I seem to be playing a lot of like all the old Castlevania games, and I completed
Oh,
Symphony of the
Castlevania
Night.
is great.
Yeah, I'm playing Lament of Innocence, which I guess in the timeline it's like the first one in the timeline,
Yeah.
and it's not bad. But like Symphony of the Night, I actually played it for the first time a couple of years ago because I never had it originally on PlayStation and loved it. And then I played Rondo of Blood, and I was like, "Yeah, this is too fucking hard." I completed it, but believe me, it was very much trial and error to complete that game.
Yeah, man, Castlevania, that's a good one. I picked up one of those little handhelds, also put on to me from Rocky. He had one of those little handhelds that had all the different emulators, and you could just load different things on the cards and all that. And then a Steam Deck that I picked up recently. So I got a little bit of emulation on there, and then just a little bit of just, you know, I've become addicted to the like $2, like $3, like indie games that people make on there, like the especially the horror games, like Haunted Flight or something, you know, like just different
Right.
things like that. So yeah.
That it's great. Like I said, like obviously now, like we're both fathers. At time, if we're not at work, or for example, if you're not at the gym or whatever, it's you spend time with the wife and kids. But you know, it's always nice if you can get that little bit of time to play games. Because, I mean, you'll probably say I've been playing video games since I've been what I can remember. You know what I mean? But it's always a struggle just getting. And when you do get an hour, and that's the reason I don't really play many PS5 games because you buy the game, it takes about 6 hours for it to install. It's like I
Yeah.
want to play the game now. I have like 6 hours
Yeah.
to install.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a great segue. So obviously, one of the things people remembered you for was like your entrance in WWE and the whole, I guess Mega Man aesthetic. So how did that come about, and was that easy to get that to happen, or was there a little bit of pushback from management?
It was pretty easy. They gave me a lot of freedom when I was there, and I mean everything happened so fast. I was actually talking with the Machine Guns about this because I knew a little bit ahead of time. They're both really good friends of mine, and I knew a little bit ahead of time when they were about to kind of debut, and so it was happening so fast for them, and that used to be a rare thing to sort of like bypass like developmental and kind of get shotgunned right onto the main roster schedule and everything, like creatively, travel wise, everything. It just happened so fast.
Mm.
So I was sort of telling them pretty much this exact experience. So like for me, it happened. It was very easy. It happened real fast. And really, I just wanted a departure from the version of me that was in CWC because this is also something that I can't remember who I was talking to about this recently, but so like that version of me was probably the most linked to like diehard, I think, wrestling fans than any other version of me. But
Yeah.
it's just so plain, you know, and like I'm just first name, last name, cool pants. I wrestle good, and like that's thin, you know. And I just wanted to pick an aesthetic that was a flavor, I just and it was actually Gulak and Claudio that sort of helps spark it because they both had said like, man, the way you move, it's like you just look like a human video game. Like everything looks too easy. And that used to be such a source of like criticism for me. People like Vince would say this like sometimes, or just producers, people like that. And it was this way my whole life. Like anywhere I worked, it was always like that. Like you make things look too easy, and it looks too much like this or like that. And at a certain point, it was Claudio that told me this. He goes, at a certain point, you get tired of the criticism, and it just becomes your strength, and that's just who you are. So it's like, oh, you're too, uncoordinated at this, or you're too rough at that, you're too loud, or whatever. Then it's like, you know what? Fuck, I'm the loud guy then. That's what I am. Like, stop telling me this for 15 years or whatever. So I thought, that's kind of a cool thing. And I really like Scott Pilgrim and Ready Player One. And I just wanted to create an aesthetic that at the time I felt like a demographic was being left out, was people like me, like that at the time, adults that were like in their 30s and they grew up in the Back to the Future Ghostbusters generation. They grew up, on Nintendo and Atari and things like that, like skateboards with only one ridge on it in the back, like, things like that. And I thought, let me create something that looks and feels like this. Like it looks like it came right out of Marty McFly's bedroom, and yeah, that's how I created it.
Awesome. You mentioned Vince. Did you have many dealings with him?
Yeah, I made it a point to talk to him as often as I could. You don't want to bother him all the time, obviously, but I wouldn't wait until like times when I needed something. Like I would knock on his door just to knock on it sometimes. You don't want to like overuse that privilege, obviously, but yeah, I would talk to him pretty regularly. He was very easy to talk to. He's very down to earth. He's very quiet. I watched that doc recently, and a lot of the way that he speaks there is very similar to real life. Like for people that watched it, they probably were like a little bit like taken back because he's not like Mr. McMahon in the doc. Like he's just like kind of a quiet, like older guy. And that's how he was. He would listen to you and he wouldn't like belittle you or criticize you. He talked to you as if you're like at the same level as him. And then if he had something that like, if it was a no, it wasn't just no, fuck off. It was like, no, but we might be able to make this better. And then he would pretty much give you like a lesson in like how to do things good. And I was like, and so that almost everybody around me got that version of him. And they were, every time people came in the door, they were surprised their first few dealings with him because of how, I guess, like how accommodating he could be and like how smart he was.
Right.
Because you're always like, oh, he must be really mean. And he could be, I'm sure, he wasn't with me, but like, I'm sure he could be. And, he could like, you hear like, oh, or you hear or think or both, he's so out of touch. And it's like, sure. And like everybody misses sometimes, like you're running a TV show that has no off season for 40 years. Like that, you're going to put out some terrible stuff sometimes, but like he is actually legitimately a very brilliant person in terms of like what he was doing for a living. So that is usually something that people were often surprised that he would treat you very well and like kind of take you by the hand and lead you through what you need to do to be a better professional. All the other stuff aside, I don't know.
No, we don't know yet. And was he the guy who was hands-on with, say, the Cruiserweight Classic, or was that Triple H?
That was really Hunter. It really didn't become something that was in Vince's hands until he saw how good it turned out. And he realized he had such a great commodity under his umbrella, so he didn't want to let it just, I guess, slip away or waste away. I don't think that they made great decisions in transitioning it, but like he wanted to make sure that it was his baby for a little bit. And I think it was kind of better when it was, in a certain aspect, because there's a lot of mistakes they made, but segregating us from everybody else on the roster was a pretty bad idea, I think, for starters, you know. But I feel like that early first year, a little bit longer generation, I think that was the best version of the show that it ever was, and that was really in Vince's hands. When he started sharing it with kind of back with Hunter, maybe it's hard to tell who exactly took the wheel at a certain point, but it felt like at a certain point you could kind of tell he was detached from it, and then it really went downhill.
Yeah, because I mean, like when I grew up watching, especially like say SmackDown, them early to mid 2000s, obviously the Cruiserweight division was highly profiled on SmackDown. So I'm guessing for a lot of yourselves who was involved with the tournament, I'm guessing that's what you were kind of thinking. It's like, okay, we'll do this tournament, then perhaps it's going to be on SmackDown or on Raw. But I guess the decision was made where you would have your own show, 205 Live.
Yeah, I remember they told us. I remember the exact moment they told us. They didn't actually, I think, tell us until the finals that it was going to be a show. They didn't tell us we had a title until he walked out with it and showed it to us.
Oh well.
I laughed because I used to tell people this all the time. When I was in the ring with Metallic, like they didn't really tell us anything was going to happen. I think they said Hunter might come out and say a few words, like for the final, but they didn't really. It wasn't like part of like the what do you say? It wasn't part of like the format of the show. Like it was just like this might happen, and then he came out like very business, and I was like, are we getting rickrolled? Like, is he just going to give us pedigrees, and this whole tournament was just like like DX is back or something? Like, because immediately I thought of like Nash spearing Mysterio into the TV truck and like just things like that, where it was like, you know, cruiserweights get squashed like for a meme sort of thing. And I was like, oh man, like, is this what's happening? And he pulled out the title and I was like, oh wow, okay. Yeah, those things we found out late. I knew the finals though and everything early. I knew that from the beginning. But yeah, the show, finding out about the show, I remember that was literally like on the way out there, like, hey, thanks for all your hard work, guys. This was all great. It was a legendary thing. It'll never happen again. Oh, by the way, you have your own show now. and it was like, oh, okay. What do you mean, by the way? Our lives now have changed forever. Thank you.
Yeah. And you had quite a program and being paired up with Brian Kendrick. Obviously, at that point, he's quite a veteran by then, but how was he to work with?
With Brian?
Yeah.
For me in particular, he was great, but like I'm biased, and I've known Brian for 25 years now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, all the stories that we told were mostly real. Like he really did used to pick me up from school to go make indie shows and things like that. I started wrestling, I think, a year before he did. And then after his first year in, he lost his spot at a developmental and he went out west. And that's where we met because I was already in that developmental. And I've known him, God, almost he and Rocky Romero are probably my two oldest friends in wrestling. I've known them forever, like since I was like 13, 14, 15 years old.
That's the thing, because I keep forgetting how old you actually are, because I don't know what the secret is. I don't know what you're drinking. Whatever it is, please share the details to everyone. But
the Oswong is real. I'm actually a vampire. That's all.
Well, there we go. And I mean, I love Kendrick, okay, great talent, but you know, by that point, he was starting to look a little bit older. But you look like you were still in your early to mid 20s at that point. So
you know, I really loved his look though at that time.
Yeah, it was different.
He and he was like, he made a point to like lose a lot of weight, like on purpose. Like it wasn't just like, you know, him just in his normal life, like however he was carrying himself. Like he actually was like trying to slim down, and he had this like scrappy, almost like a crazy homeless guy look, you know. But yeah, he had this totally different face to him that I thought was cool, and I think that he was aiming for. I think he kind of knew that the hooligan baggy shorts Brian Kendrick is dead. You know, like that's not him anymore. So I thought it was brilliant, his reinvention. I thought it was really cool. I was a big fan of what he came up with, and I remember like almost immediately after the tournament, kind of, I probably shouldn't have said this because I'm sure Hunter was like, "Oh, you're such a beta for saying this," but like I remember going to him and saying, we should move the belt to Brian. Like we should give Brian a chance because he's so good right now." And I've always thought he was great, but especially at that time, I thought it was a killer look, and it was so good. So
yeah, that Cruiserweight title though, in them early days, like the list of names that had the championship, obviously yourself, Brian, Pat Corp, Adrian Neville, I guess back then he had a good run with it, and
yeah.
like the list of names, and there was a lot of prestige with the title. So when you saw these names, like other people in the division as well, like Cedric Alexander, Buddy Murphy eventually got there as well. You've had a pretty stacked roster when you actually stand back and look at it. A lot of them people went on to, you know, more success or even like still with the company.
Yeah, pretty incredible, and yeah, I always thought that they had such great gems in the tournament that like looked like they weren't going to stick around. I mean, like for example, Mendoza, right? Joaquin Wild's partner now.
Yeah.
He's doing great work. He's fantastically talented, and it was almost like people forgot he was in the CWC for a little bit, and now
I did, to be honest.
And now he's outlasting. He outlasted all of us. Yeah, there's some fantastic dudes. I really thought that they should have hung on to Damian Slater. He is so brilliant, and I feel like they I don't think that they misbooked or misused anybody really, but if they did, he's probably the one guy I think that they misread him and misused him, because to use him in a spot for Tajiri, which is great. I'm actually really excited we had Tajiri, but like they really needed to see more of Slater. He's so good, and right now I think he's probably the best trainer in the world. You know, he's in Australia, and they really should have had him. He's a master. He's amazing.
Yeah. One of the most, I guess, famous angles for the Cruiserweight division at the time was on Raw. Yourself and the rest of the Cruiserweights were around ringside, and Enzo Amore was cutting a promo.
Oh,
so
yeah.
I've got to ask.
The handcuff in the chair promo. That's what I like to call it.
Well, how much of that promo was planned, and how much of it was just ad lib?
I mean, I'm sure it was all planned. It's just a funny scenario because like you're essentially telling everybody like, hey, we're going to handcuff you to a chair and have somebody punch you in the face. You just got to sit there and take it. Like, so it's not the best scenario, but for Enzo, it's great. You know, yeah. I love Enzo too. I enjoy running into him at shows and stuff to this day. I think he's so talented. He's another guy. I wish that he had more time there to do his thing. And he's another guy that I thought added to the depth of what we had. It's just he's so different that, yeah, I think a lot of people just didn't want to give him a chance for certain traditional reasons. But he's so very different that there's so much stuff he could have done with so many different guys.
Yeah, the one thing you can't take away from him, he was charismatic, and he could hold a room with the microphone.
And he's honestly not. I think he gets a bad rap as a wrestler. He's not. He's a better wrestler than people think he is. He knows the value of his strengths, so you know he sticks to that. You know, it'd be like it would be like, insisting Brock Lesnar keep doing the shooting star. Like, brother, he's got so much better other strengths than that. He doesn't need it,
Yep. So we're going to take it back a little bit. We'll talk about your TNA run. So obviously coming in Suicide, was the reason they changed the name from Suicide to Manik was because of sponsors, or was that just always something to change the name up?
Oh no, that was my idea.
Right.
We where were we? There was an event and a tragedy that happened, and I remember that was specifically that I thought, okay, maybe now is the right time. We did a pay-per-view in Boston, and it was when the Boston Marathon bombing happened.
Right.
And it was like a week after or something really close. And they had already kind of thought like, maybe this would be kind of a hard thing to stick with the name, the character. And you also have to keep in mind, like in 12, 13, around this era, Marvel movies hadn't taken a turn the way that they have now. Like a lot of the comic book movies and things, Suicide Squad, like, so that name on like a superhero looking character didn't have the type of acceptance it does now. Like you could do that now and people would understand, okay, it's not that serious, it's fun. But at the time it was a little bit more raw, like, so it was like kind of hard. So I was the one that recommended, hey, like if you guys are thinking about rebooting it or changing it, now's the time. I didn't pick the name Manik, they picked that. I don't think that that's great, but but it's something, I guess. That was my call. I was the one that said, if you were ever going to do it now, because you're about to do an angle where you're going to take the mask off. The look of the costume is going to change a little bit. And I had ideas of how to change it. I kind of wanted to kind of create the Aswan character then. And I was going to maybe sort of take Suicide into like a darker, like more macabre type of thing and make it, because I thought that would take the sting out of the name Suicide a little bit, to like almost make it like more like not cartoony, but like make it more fantasy and like more, because if I'm just like a wrestler and then that's it, I'm just like, I'm Suicide, then that's a little bit harder to be like explain. But when it's way like super fantasy, then I thought it'd be a little easier. But that's how that came about.
Right. You've just mentioned something interesting there, the Aswan character, and just seen something recently with a reporter from Shiteful, Kate, and she had some stupid comments, a stupid question for Lashley recently. I'm sure you probably saw it. What's the whole deal with that? Because
I'm not really plugged into wrestling media stuff, to be honest. I didn't really know anything. I still kind of don't know anything about her.
right.
My wife is very plugged into that, as well as women are.
Yeah.
She loves gossip and tea and things like that. So she kind of explained to me, like, because I don't even really know what Fightful is in general. I know what it is, but like I don't follow any of these things. I don't know any of these things from the next. I don't know. I just know that I saw somebody who was representing something professionally and commented that. And I remember at the time, like kind of like I was, I think, nice about it, because I do get it. I think I get abrasive humor. I think it's funny. Like in the locker room, guys make jokes like that all the time, and it's funny. Yeah. Like it's not a big deal. Like I'm not super offended, but I think that the bigger layer is that when you're doing that openly and like you're sending a certain message, and it's like I guess I just responded as if to kind of understand, like, well, what's the goal here? What are you trying to accomplish with this joke? And I actually was less offended by the joke than I was by her apology, because her apology was sort of dismissive. It was very short. It was impersonal. And it was mostly like almost like a media trained response. And I took media training with WWE, so I know what a fake response is when you're just trying to just get a message out and be done with it. And it was mostly to that effect, like, sorry, I'll do better, like that sort of thing. And it's like, I mean, one, you didn't do better. You didn't do better. but that's not for me to judge. You know, I'm not Lashley or any whatever else has happened. I don't know. You know, but it just felt like it was almost like the underlying theme of her response was, you're not important enough to my base for me to get any backlash, so I don't have to give you a real response. Like if she had made that same joke about, I don't know, Eddie Kingston's race or ethnicity or something, or like Swerve, right? She would not have given that as the apology. It would have been something way different. So I was more insulted by her response because I was like, you're insulting me as a human there. Like, I understand the joke that you gave, but like now you're insulting me and it's not a joke. And that's what I was, and that part I just let go. So I was done with it until until whatever the current event came up. And I wasn't even aware of the Lashley thing. It was more just like,
it was quite funny.
Friends of friends of friends.
I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, like friends and friends and friends of people kind of mentioned it, and then it came up, and I was like, well, you know, this has happened before, but
yeah.
Well, I don't hold any ill will towards, I mean, her or anybody really. I know that she works with Sean, and I'm fine with Sean. I've talked with him before. I just think that, I mean, in my case, it was a bad joke, and actually, like I said, I understood the humor in it. But what I didn't like was her response was to me insulting, but like also B, there's no consist, like if it were the other way around, if I was the one that made that joke, you would try to end my career.
Oh yeah.
So like, why, when you spend all day policing that and then you do that, like what's the disconnect there? And then I think that is really the microcosm of the problem. Is like, why do you feel the need to police everything? You know, people are smart. You know, if they don't like something somebody does, your outlet doesn't need to spotlight that. Like, they'll make the decision on their own. You know, and if they decide that they don't care, you're not going to make them care. So just let them not care. It's entertainment. Like, let them just go on reading the books, watching the shows, watching the movie, consuming the content they want to consume. You know, you can't force people to judge the way you judge. Just let people do their thing. People are smart. They can figure it out on their own, you know?
Yeah, and to be honest, TJ, I think that's something in general with, say, social media. I try not to go on it too much, to be honest. I mainly go on it, you know, just to share links to me channel and like to me episodes. But I find that on social media quite a lot, like, if you don't agree with that person's beliefs, whatever they believe, oh, you're the bad person, friend. I don't want to talk to you. Or, oh, look at this person. They doesn't agree with our beliefs. And honestly, there's so many people I talk about with this, and I'm like, it's so flipping stupid. But, you know, that's the world we live in, I'm afraid.
Yeah. I just thought that, you know, that's my takeaway from it, is that, like, you don't need to police the world, and if you are, you're being awfully inconsistent about it. Outside of that, I don't know her, so I can't dislike her, and you know, I don't know her and or any of them, you know, so I don't know. But it's like, you know, you guys created a good business around news of a fantasy television show. Like, that's a win. Why don't you just?
I'll give them credit for that.
Why don't you just stick to that and stick to that and enjoy reporting on that? Like, I don't understand the need to police the way that they do.
No. I've just realized you're the second suicide / Manik portrayal I've had on the show, because the earlier episode I had Loki on the show, so I've just realized, that's two of you I've had on.
Oh,
Loki's
great.
Loki speaks his mind. He's not afraid to share it.
I love Key. He's a very complex individual. He's very well read. He's very smart. He's very opinionated, obviously.
Yeah.
But with me, he's always been very simple. He's always just been Brandon. So I like Key a lot. I get along with him. And I think I think he's probably the most underrated performer I've ever worked with in my life. I mean, he's just, there's nobody else that is more talented in so many different ways, every way you could ask him to be, than him. I mean, the only thing he doesn't do that you could ask him to do is be 6 feet tall. Like, I mean, other than that, he's just brilliant. So, you know, he's from an artistic standpoint, he's one of my favorite people to be around, to watch, and to work with.
Yeah, when he's in the ring, you believe him, if that makes sense. You believe he's real 100%. When you watch him, because he portrays himself as real, and I can't help but respect that.
No, he's fantastic. I think that he's, you know, he's maybe the most talented person I've ever come across.
Yeah. So someone I want to talk about, and someone you shared quite a bit of screen time with in Impact, Hulk Hogan. Obviously one of, if not the biggest wrestler of all time, you could say. How was it being with him, and was you intimidated by him because it's Hulk Hogan?
Intimidated? No, I don't. I'm a bad person to ask that question. I don't get like nerves or anxiety about things like that. And people and moments, I don't look at either of those as bigger than me. Not because I see myself as big, but because my brain doesn't compute stuff like that. Right. Like I've never looked at somebody and said, "Oh, they're really important. I got to be careful with this." I just see them for what they are. They're that person. You know, if I'm taking the last free throw of a basketball game, I've never had shaky hands. It's just like, well, this is a shot like any other shot. So with him, I didn't feel that, but he was a uniquely cool person to be around, because not even just in wrestling, but I think just even in pop culture in general, which is crazy when you think about the statement I'm going to make, I guess. Like, his silhouette and who he is like the tippy top of a list of people that are universally recognizable in the world. You know?
Yeah.
Like, if you think of like human beings, like if you made a short list of human beings that you could steal them from wherever they are and just drop them anywhere in the world, any civilization, and their probability of being recognized, you're talking about people like Michael Jordan, Muhammad Ali, Jesus Christ, you know, like people like this. Like, Hulk Hogan is one of these people. Like, he's been out of the ring for decades. I mean, if you really kind of think of him being done with Hulkamania in like 1992, and then in general, like, you know, after Hollywood Hogan, like certainly by like 2000, he's kind of like done, you know. For him to have been done that long, and now kids that have grown up in the last 10 years know him, like they know the mustache, the bandana, the body, like you could make a shadow of him and they're like, oh, that's Hulk Hogan. It's like, how do you know that? You're 12. How would you know that? That's insane, is like how like significant he is in that regard. And so I guess what I'm saying is he doesn't have to be a cool person to anybody. Like,
no.
You know, like if there's anybody that could, like, they are who they are, they do not have to be nice to you. He's one of those guys, but he is the complete opposite. Like, he is so normal and down to earth. It's crazy. Like, in the locker room, he's just like any other guy. I remember we had a talent meeting or some meeting at ringside, and he was just sitting in the locker room with everybody else. It's like he didn't know what it was. He's like, where is this meeting we got to go to? And I'm like, this is crazy. I'm walking around with like Alex Shelley or like other X-Division people or whoever. I can't remember who was there at the time. And I was like, you're Hulk Hogan. Like, I thought you called this meeting.
Yeah. And
he's just a dude like anybody else. Somebody else was saying, somebody that was a Tampa flight, because it was a story about travel. And he got like a commercial, you know, they booked him travel to go somewhere. And for whatever reason, they booked him just normal commercial airline travel on like Southwest. and he didn't understand how Southwest boards. For American Southwest, they don't give you a seat number. They just give you a number, and that's the order you stand in line just to enter the plane, and then you choose any seat, like a bus, right? And so he's like asking, I think it was our seamstress, like, how does this work? And she was like, you're Hulk Hogan, this is crazy. And she like took him to like the desk and was like, you cannot have this guy in this boarding line. Like, please board him separate from, because it's going to be a disaster. Like, everybody's going to be like, oh, that's Hulk Hogan. But it didn't occur to him that like he should do that. He was just like, how do I do this with everybody else? You know, he stops for everybody when they ask for pictures or autographs or whatever. He's like, it's insane how normal he is for like his stature, I guess is what I'm saying.
No, I was talking to Ernest Cat Miller the other night.
Oh yeah.
And he was speaking about Hogan, and same as what yourself said. He said he was always so cool backstage. He said didn't walk around like a big massive star. He said he was just so cool with everyone, and he was always open to sharing ideas with everyone.
I feel like people around him that are close to him force him to be a bigger behind the scenes star than he would otherwise be. Like if he just showed up to work by himself, he would just set his bag down, sit with all the boys and do whatever. But I feel like I feel like people around him are like, no, dude, you're Hulk Hogan. You should definitely have a separate room, or you should do this or this or this, you know? Not that they're bad influences, but it just almost doesn't occur to him that he's who he is. Like, I'm sure he knows he is who he is, obviously, but like, and he's definitely smart and like crafty with his business. He knows how to protect himself for sure. But like, he doesn't treat people like that, you know, is what I'm saying. Like he's always been, and like, you know, I did a lot of promos and things with him, and it wasn't like, it didn't feel weird or intimidating. I remember Jason Hervey almost had to intimidate me for him because we did a take and it was kind of a bust. And I'm sure it was a bust because of, it was like because of, on my end, like whatever we did. And he's like, we're going to go again. And he pulls me aside. Hogan was like doing some other thing for a second. And Hervey goes, that was him taking the ball and running with it because you can't, and all this stuff. And I'm like, whoa, okay. So I'll be better in the next one. And we got through it, but like Hogan didn't act that way at all. He was cool. And actually I should say Hervey is not cool, but it's almost like what I said, like, it's like the people around him make him more of a star than he acts. Like he's so easy.
Yeah. How was Dixie like?
She was really nice. She was kind of like a mom or an aunt. Like I was it was almost like I was around my auntie or something like that all the time. You know, she would kind of ask like how you are and like how the family is and things like that. She would like know things about each people's like lives. I never had to have any kind of important business things with her. So I don't know if maybe there was like another side of her that was like shrewd and hard to deal with. But like she was always so sweet with me. And even later, like when she was not really attached to like TNA, for example, and I would see her like she would be like a guest and she would be just as sweet. And I think she was a guest at like WWE shows too later, and totally the exact same person. Like she was always so nice. I remember she was so excited for me to sign my contract there because it was shortly after I was homeless. And so they made a promo about it, like kind of like a pseudo real life thing. Like this kid is actually signing a contract after being homeless, which is a real story. And she took it so to heart. Like she was so proud that she was able to like have an opportunity for somebody that she didn't realize went through that. And I was like, wow, that's really nice of you, because a lot of bosses wouldn't give a fuck. They're just like, you know, what can you do for me? And if not, you can go right back to that cardboard box. Like, and she was so nice.
I mean, I don't know if you want to speak about that. How was that time in your life? And I can only imagine it's just such a struggle. Obviously, you've moved on from it and you've, you know, done great things, but how hard was that time in your life?
I mean, it's hard, but I mean, life is hard, right? I mean,
yeah.
I think the one thing it taught me is that like life in general is hard. So because you can't, weather that storm if you feel sorry for yourself.
No.
That's the thing, is like, you could sit there and be like, oh, this really sucks, because it does. It really sucks to be like, I could starve tonight. Like, that's a real thing. Like, if I don't eat food in like the next 2 days, I could die, it's freezing cold in the rain and I don't have anywhere to go. So I could die. Like that sucks, My parents, who were also homeless because it was a recession, and they're on the other coast, so I was not accessible to them. Like, I didn't have anywhere to go. So it's not like, I think that was something that was like a misconception. Like, people thought I was homeless in wrestling school and I just didn't want to go home. And so I got a lot of criticism from people that didn't understand that wasn't the case. It was way later in my career, I lost all my jobs and I was a grown man, and my family was also homeless. So like, I wasn't like a choice. Like, it wasn't a matter of pride. Like, I could just go crash with my uncle or something like that. Like, nobody had anywhere to go.
No.
So yes, you could sit around and think like, this sucks and feel bad. But if you do then that's your life forever, until you decide not to feel that way. And then the more I think about it, it really taught me compassion, because now other people in their lives, it taught me compassion and accountability. Like, there's a balance to it.
Yeah, there is.
You have to be able to look at yourself and other people and be like, you need to have accountability for that. I need to have accountability for this, and vice versa, whatever. And you can't feel sorry for when people can't hold the line. But at the same time, I also developed a lot of empathy for other people when it's like, oh, they're going through this, or their job is hard, or their life, or their kids, or whatever. Their marriage is falling apart, whatever the case is. And it's like, people would look at me like, dude, you were homeless. Like, what's worse than that? I'm like, well, everybody has a version of things they go through. So it taught me that too. So it kind of balanced me out. But yeah, I mean, it's tough. The hardest part really was that, the country was going through such a recession that I couldn't get a real job. That was, and so the Alfred Hitchcock Twilight Zone irony of it was that the only thing I could do for money was wrestle in these shitty Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday night shows at bars for like $10, $15.
Yeah.
So then I could definitely eat McDonald's dollar menu for tuna packets for like at least a few days until the next round. And I remember thinking, this is like divine comedy or something, because it's like, I'm begging God, like, I don't want to wrestle anymore. You've shown me I'm a failure. I don't belong. You're telling me this is not for me. Let me go clean pools or pump gas. But I would apply for these jobs, and they're like, no, we got nothing for you. And college graduates couldn't even get jobs during that time. And I was like, this is insane. Like, so it tested my faith a lot too. So I was raised Catholic, I'm a Christian, and I still am. But it was tough, but those are sort of the things I learned from it. Like that,
I mean, fair play to you, TJ. And when, I've never been through that experience. Obviously, we've all had our troubles in life, like you said. But I would imagine going through that, I can only imagine like how appreciate you are now with everything you've got. Beautiful family, beautiful home.
Well, thank you very much.
Yeah, I can only imagine. So congrats. Because, and like you said, it does give you a lot of empathy for people. Obviously, people like, there's accountability, but it really gives you empathy, thinking, what is that person's story? Why are they in that situation?
Yeah. And for all manner of people, and people you wouldn't even think. I developed a lot of empathy for really successful people too. And people, I think people don't understand that, because it's like, why do we need it? What, like why would we even need empathy or like sympathy for like a billionaire, for example? Like like Elon Musk or somebody. Like, why would we even need empathy for that guy? He's got everything. But it's like at one time they didn't, you know, they had to figure something out at some point, and they had to create that. So like, that was another thing too. Like, it's sort of like, because in order to get out of that, I had to make something out of nothing, you know, because nobody ever gave me a job, you know, and it took a long time before I could get back to TNA, and then, you know, eventually go back to WWE, New Japan, and all these places that I had lost. And so, you know, I had to teach myself like how to take a bad loan and use it to invest in my home, and like flip that and like make a profit, and use that to go into something else, and then flip that and build equity, and use the equity to do this, and then pay off this bad loan, and then create this. You know, I had to self-teach I had to learn all that on my own. And so it sort of made me look at, like, I don't hate capitalism anymore, for example. You know,
No.
I never hated it to begin with, but it's like, it made me understand that, like, you know, in order to be successful in life, and to take care of others, and to provide opportunities for others, and start a family, and to take care of your friends, at some point you have to create something out of nothing.
Yeah.
And that is so hard. Like, it's hard to be like, what does the world or my life not have that I have to create in order to get above it where I'm at? That's insanely hard. So it kind of taught me that maybe the people that hate that are people that don't want to put in that work. Like, they can't figure that out.
I mean,
you know?
harsh, but it's true.
Yeah, it made me more open-minded about, you know, succeeding in the world, and like what it takes. Like, it's a hard truth, but it also taught me empathy for others of any kind, like people at the bottom, people in the middle, people at the top. Like, it made me really respect all the different things that people are going through to figure something out.
That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. I really do appreciate it.
I'm just glad I survived it.
Oh, amen. Well, so getting back to a bit of wrestling. So I forgot your exact timeline, TJ, but you can tell me when you moved a bit more full-time with TNA. Was that 2012, 2013?
To 12 to 13, somewhere in there. I came back in 12. I remember I was at Ring of Honor, maybe 2010 to 12-ish. I had to ask Cornette for my release, because there weren't enough dates on the schedule, and they kind of were restricting a lot of the West Coast guys for travel purposes, like budget reasons. So I remember the Bucks too, the Young Bucks, because we would be on the same flights. We came from the same area, and they were concerned over dates, and I was concerned over dates. And I asked them, because I said that I have an opportunity to go to TNA. And he was super gracious about it. He was like, he was like, I'll even write them myself to tell them how good you've been for us, and, you know, whatever. And I was like, you know, I'm just happy that you're not motherfucking me on this and will let me go. But
See, everyone, Cornette does have a heart. He's not a mean person all the time.
No, he was really great. Honestly, I think he knows that people will listen to him for one reason or another if he's a certain way when delivering his message. But he is a very accommodating and brilliant person at times. And he was very, very great with me professionally. Amazing to me, actually. But yeah, so then I was around 12, I think I got to go back, and I was still Puma to TNA. At least they just were like, oh, we have Puma back. But they didn't have any ideas. And then it was like, after a few weeks at home, I remember being at home, and they had aired these bumpers for Suicide, and they had like a revolving door of people playing Suicide because nobody wanted to do it. And I remember saying, well, I'm home, so until you think of something for me, can I just do that? And it was Al Snow was the one that I called about it, because he was in the office at the time. And he was like, yeah, I'll put it through. And then him and, I don't know, Terry Taylor or somebody. And they were like, okay, yeah, we're going to have you do that. And then just from the moment I did the first one, they were like, this is how we always thought it would be from the beginning. And, you know, please do it forever. And I was like, yeah, sure. No problem.
So I'm trying to work time out. So did you did you come back when AJ was still part of the company, or did you just miss him?
No, he was still there. My first show, my first show as Suicide was is this is why I believe in divine intervention, because my first show back with TNA under contract was in Tampa, where I was homeless.
Right.
And I thought, this is crazy that, like, because they were on the road. It could have been any city in the country. And they're like, we have a start date for you. It's in Tampa. And I said, no way. Yeah, that was, they were still doing 3-way matches for the X Division at the time, because I think they thought that was like a short-lived, like, maybe this will make it different. AJ was still there. He was still there for a little while. He was, I don't know, whatever they had, like a faction thing, right? Main Event Mafia.
Main Event Mafia. What's the one? Fortune, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
I think it was that. Now, I guess what I wanted to get to, for a lot of people, a lot of TNA fans as well, diehard fans, the day AJ decided to leave, turned a lot of people off from TNA. What was the general atmosphere of the locker room when AJ left? Was there a big shift in attitude, or was it business as usual?
A little bit of both, but I remember it feeling like almost like I'll say The Office, but in a collective way. Like, I don't think it was like any one person. Like, it wasn't like Dixie was saying this or something, but it felt like it was a collective message that anybody who wants to be here can be here. Anybody who doesn't have to, and we're willing to let that guy walk out the door. Yeah. So, and honestly, it was sort of on the surface, I feel like people took that as like a grim message, but I kind of think in the long run that was the right message to send, because it was like, be here or not, like, you could be here and make it cool and work with whatever we can agree to, or don't and go somewhere else, But when AJ left, that it was like, it felt like that was like a line was drawn. Like if you want to be here, and let's make this good, or just don't. And everybody was like, okay, well, you just let go your favorite son. So
yeah, literally you missed the TNA.
Yeah, like, I mean, it would be like if Vince let Cena leave.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was thinking about. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it was pretty big, in that regard. Because I mean, there's tons of talented people come and go, and that's all subjective. AJ is inarguably fantastic, one of the greatest people, of any generation. But there's a lot of great people that could come and go. But he meant so much just in name and who he is to them. And for them to, again, let their favorite son walk out the door was like, that was big. It was a big message to everybody. Like, you got to make it work. It's not about any one guy.
Yeah, it was a big one. What's your thoughts on this crossover with NXT and TNA? And would that have been something you would have liked to have been? I mean, maybe still will be one day, but is that something you actually like the idea of, this cross promotion between NXT and TNA?
Yeah, I don't know. A lot of the crossover things, I think, are tough, because everybody is protecting real estate. It's really hard to make that work. Like, forbidden doors are a lot more forbidden than people think they are. It's really hard to collaborate. But I think that everybody's doing a pretty good job of it. I didn't see the NXT and TNA one coming. So when that came about, I was super interested in it, just by virtue of like that is something so different for WWE. You know, you have to go back to like the early 90s or something when it was like they would occasionally have like All Japan people crossing over and things like that.
Mm.
But like in such a minimal way. It wasn't even to this regard.
Yeah,
So I
be
think
like a couple of wrestlers at the Rumble or something like that.
yeah. So I think that this, when I saw that, I thought, oh, this is really interesting. And I think that they've chosen a lot of really good people to go back and forth, you know. And the best thing is, I think that there's some people they have yet to choose that would be really great too. And I like that it looks like TNA has built a lot of momentum recently, which is
Yeah.
I'm sure it's surprising a lot of people, but I think a lot of people don't even realize it. Like the houses look really good and the arenas look really good. And I just think that some people still have like a pandemic era imagination of what they are. And
Mm.
it's like they're doing so well that, you know, along with their crossovers, like such good momentum potential.
Yeah. I mean, you're a perfect person to ask because even though looking at you, you still like you know, you're in your early 20s. You've been a while, you've been around for a while now, and you've seen all these like eras, these attitude eras, ruthless aggression, and all that. And obviously the wrestling landscape. What's your thoughts on the landscape today with obviously WWE's breaking all kinds of records? TNA seems to be back on the rise again. And obviously, last 5 years we've seen the emergence of AEW. What's your general thoughts on the current landscape of professional wrestling?
My thoughts on the landscape, oh, just of the growth of the industry in general, like where we're
Uh,
at.
yeah,
Um, the amount of content is staggering, and it's weird. I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing. You know, it's a good thing because so many people are working. It can be a bad thing because we're in unprecedented territory of like market value for people, I guess. So it's sort of hard. I think I think it makes it a little harder for guys to understand their worth
mm,
because the volume almost makes so many things expendable, you know? Whereas previously the 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 world of the industry was a lot smaller, so value per person who got in was higher.
yes,
So I don't know. It's a weird layered question to answer.
yeah.
um,
Now I understand what you mean. Like,
Content wise, I think it's great. I just think that I wish we would reward. I wish we weren't so focused on creating content based on this is an exciting match or a good match, you know,
yeah,
things like that. Like, because that's so short sighted and it also creates a difficulty to it presents a difficulty in creating a story. For example, so many people get paired up in matches on shows based on that match is going to look really cool.
yes,
However, from a storytelling standpoint, this guy means so much differently than this guy in terms of the viewer that even though their base ability is like, yeah, this is going to be a really cool match in a vacuum, people watching based on narratives know that this guy is never going to beat this guy.
yeah,
The end of the sentence is always going to be a W for this guy.
yeah,
So then the ability for them to have a great match suffers because the art of creating, I don't want to say mystery, but like the art of creating excitement based on a result is being lost because it's like that's not how people are booking wrestling anymore. Not everybody, but like there's a big enough shift in it that now that's what it became. I think people didn't see it coming for a while because it was like, yeah, of course you're happy to see exciting matches, but then after a while, as a viewer, and this is me just not as a wrestler, but as a viewer, after a while you start to pick up the pattern that it's like, well, I definitely know certain guys are just never going to win. So then, how many times can you see that before it's like, well, this isn't even an exciting match anymore, you know?
Yeah,
Like,
true. Very true.
it's kind of like, when you create like a comic book movie, some fall flat, some don't. And it's like some fall flat. And it's like, if you look at it in a vacuum, if you didn't know any other comic book movies existed and you just watched that one movie, like you Men in Blacked yourself and like you didn't know anything else existed, you would be like, wow, the visual effects are great. The character looks so cool. And like you would be excited for it. But because it's against the backdrop of all these other movies, the ending might be not climactic. The narrative may not suit, what you're watching. So therefore, it doesn't matter all these superficial elements. It's like, get this out of my face. I don't care about this as much as the Avengers, Whereas like you want to see who Thanos kills at the end of Avengers, like who's like it's such a huge deal. You don't give a shit about anything else. Like, so I think that's the age-old art of storytelling, is that like, not that we're losing that value, but it's becoming watered down to include other elements as a foundation that probably shouldn't be the foundation.
I understand what you mean.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right, TJ. Well, it's been great to have you. I've got one last question before I let you go, but thank you for your time. So I'm gonna put you on the spot here. What's your personal Mount Rushmore?
Let's see. I think you have to put Hogan number one because he's Babe Ruth, he's Michael Jordan. I just like the word pro wrestling is like his face, it is what it is. I think you go Hogan. I think you go Steve Austin. I think you go The Rock. I think he earned that too,
Loved his recent run.
Yeah.
Final boss, loved it.
And then if I'm to kind of expand it globally, just in terms of wrestling in general, I think you have to go Santo and Inoki.
Inoki, yes.
So I think you go Hogan, you go Austin, you go Rock. That covers North America so generationally. And you could argue going back to like Luthez and some others before, but like the industry as we know it was started with Hogan.
Yeah.
But I think you go Hogan, you go Austin, you go Rock, you go Inoki. Wrestling in Japan without Inoki, it wouldn't be the same. And you go Santo. And like, you cannot be in Mexico and not recognize Santo. Like it's funny because he's like Hogan level recognizability to the culture. So a lot of people probably don't understand that, but yeah. So I think that would be that's probably my Mount Rushmore. Is if I know it's supposed to be 4, but I'd probably say if I had to pick 5, that would be the top 5.
I've had a few people say 5, to be fair.
But if I had to say 4, I would probably do those same guys, but I might swap out Rock. It's a toss-up between Rock and Austin because they sort of split the generation a little bit. And I feel like I'm being unfair to Cena because he carried a torch for so long, and he's also very like on their level of mainstream. But like, I just feel like gun to my head, anybody on the street, if I had to guess who they would sort of like casually think of as a pro wrestler, if they didn't even know pro wrestling, they'd probably know Steve Austin. They might know The Rock as a movie star first and then be like, oh yeah, I heard that he was a wrestler before, but like,
not weird.
But yeah, it's crazy, right? But Steve Austin is like, people imitate Steve Austin that have never seen pro wrestling. True. Just because they know it, So if I had to say a proper Mount Rushmore of 4, it'd probably be Hogan, Austin, Inoki Santo.
Awesome. Well, TJ, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show. Could go all night, but you've got kids. I've got sleep. I have to get in a minute. But
Thank you so much. Sorry about the timing and everything. I appreciate
don't
it.
worry about it. Well, this show will be going out in a couple of weeks, but is there anything you want to promote and tell everyone where they can find you and such?
Yeah, actually, usually I never have anything to plug because I'm super boring and I just wrestle, and whoever's watching this probably already knows where I'm wrestling, so it doesn't matter. But I do have a couple projects coming up. My wife and I have started our own underground pro wrestling card here in Las Vegas. We have a home here in Las Vegas. It's coming from the world famous Nerd Bar. If you watch pro wrestlers on social media, you've probably seen them hang out at this bar whenever they pass through Vegas. That's the venue. And our first show is December 6th, and then probably reoccurring every 6 weeks or so. So please check it out. I'm hoping to find a platform to stream it on, probably just my Twitch initially. So you could find my Twitch. My socials are all at MegaTJP. And then also much of the same crew that's helping put on the show we're also starting a podcast, the Los Hombres podcast. And I might actually have to ask you for some advice on how to do some of the inner workings
More than happy to help you. Contact me anytime.
But yeah, that'll be alongside Lindsay Dorado, who I'm sure a lot of people know, and you know where to find them, and my buddy Eddie Pozos, a soon-to-be famous comedian. But yeah, those are my two upcoming projects. Please, guys, follow them, and if you're in Las Vegas, please come to our show. We just want it to be fun.
Awesome. Well, TJ,
by the way, you can follow the show. I'm bad at plugging stuff. You can follow the show at Pinche Loco Pro on Twitter and Instagram.
Awesome. Like I said, TJ, thank you very much. Anytime, more than welcome to come back.
Thank you so much, James. I appreciate it.